Okay, hello everybody. Good afternoon on this beautiful Tuesday, June 28th. Welcome. Before we begin, just to remind you that this is the open part of the meeting is being recorded and is being live streamed, and of course will be available on the YouTube channel following. As we get started here, let's just call the roll. Please raise your hand and say that you're here when I call your name, starting with Deputy Mayor Moher.
I'm here, and thanks to everyone for changing the meeting time till this afternoon. Much appreciated.
Good to see that you're able to be here. Councillor Landsman.
I too am here.
And Councillor Watt.
And I three am here.
Well, welcome all three of you. Also staff, we have CAO, Lana Arthur. Hello. And our acting clerk, Martina Chait-Hartwig. And the mayor is absent today. So with quorum of the committee in attendance, we will call the meeting to order. Do we have any disclosure of pecuniary interest today?
None.
Seeing no hands.
Oh, Sheila.
Sheila, Councillor Redmond?
Yes, thank you. I know I don't have disclosure of pecuniary interest, but I want to just mention that for some reason my iPad just quit and I do not have the agenda in front of me, so bear with me.
Okay. All right. Do we need to take a moment for you to pull that up, or are you okay if we proceed?
Please proceed.
All right. Thank you. So looking at item number 3 on the agenda, the adoption of our agenda, could I get a motion to approve the agenda today? Councillor Watt? Councillor Landsman? All in favor? That carries. And approval of the minutes from March 29th that were distributed in your package. Deputy Mayor Moher. You were moving to approve that? Okay, and Councillor Watt is seconding that. All in favor? And that also carries. Any business arising out of the previous minutes? Seeing nothing, we can move on to other business and reports. So item 6.1. We have the draft Township of Douro-Dummer Human Resource Policy Manual. This is coming forward from our last committee meeting in March, and I will hand it over to Alana to take the lead on this, please.
Thank you, Chair Watson. Yes, we've seen these policies come forward a couple of times, made some various revisions, and there were some minor edits that were made since our last HR committee meeting. Matthew was in attendance and I had indicated that he'd go back and make those revisions. So I think it's here today for final approval, as long as the committee is comfortable with the policy or policies.
Great, thank you. And I see a lot of the marked up version is simply pagination and cleaning up some of the language throughout. Any questions or comments from the committee? Deputy Mayor Moher?
I hate to be a real stickler, and with all due respect, this policy is up to 644 pages now instead of 50. How can this be a working document for staff and I know the HR people had various reasons why it has to be this detailed, but I just think it's going to be a thing that's going to sit on shelves collecting dust. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Alana?
Thank you, through you, Chair Watson, to the committee. I think what we will try to do is pull out those policies that are most relevant in specific areas. So when we have new staff come on, I'm not sure that every staff member needs to, go through them in detail on a regular basis. And we'll continue to consult with the HR consultants just to make sure that we're staying up to date. I too would like to see a more condensed document. But after Matthew was in attendance last time explaining the necessity of having, the detail in them, especially through some of those health and safety policies, I feel with their professional guidance that we should maintain what is there to ensure that we're protected where we need to be. But we'll try to do our best to keep it for those employees that need to review those that are specific to them, and keep an eye on it to see if there's any way we can reduce it moving forward.
Thank you. It's a fair point. Councillor Lansman.
You're muted.
Councillor, you're muted.
Sorry. Based on what Ilana is saying, it would seem that is like a book of policies that can be at one pulled out for particular instances and things like that. Maybe just like a reference binder for it. Is that what I understand, Ilana?
Through the chair to Councillor Lansman, yes, and they are available in their entirety on our HR Live login. So each of the employees do have the ability to log on and take a look at the entire document, so they can pull out or review what they need to review as it's required. I think we've done some extensive work on it, so I'm feeling relatively comfortable that I have a pretty good handle on it and can direct staff when necessary. So, and I think as things change, again, we'll consult with our HR consultants to see if there's any way that condense it so it makes it easier for staff. But I'm also happy to sort of sit with staff if there's concerns or questions about it.
Thank you. And as I understand it, Alana, correct me if I'm wrong, but the HR Live SHRP engagement that we have, the consultant pushes out information to us as well, and will kind of send us either through HR Live or through other means updates of when things change, or when it's time that we re-look at specific segments of the overall policy. Is that correct?
That's correct. Anytime there's a legislation change or anything like that, definitely they're generally on top of that, and that's why we have them here for us, so that they can watch that and keep the pulse on it, so we don't have to watch the day-to-day stuff and try to keep us up to date.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions from the committee?
No.
I know a lot of work has gone into this. We've read this large document a number of times as it's gone through those different revisions, and I know staff and the consultants have worked quite hard on it. I feel like we might be at a point where this committee could be ready to formally receive this. Could we get a motion on that?
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Lansman, thank you. And somebody to second that. Councillor Watt. And all in favor? And that motion carries. Again, thank you to staff and to our consultants and the council for taking the time to go over that. It was a lot of work for sure. Moving down to item 6.2, also Alana, IT services contract. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So originally we had a report that had gone to council with regards to the services that we currently had with MicroAge. We were asked to take a look at the county, which we did. We've had discussions with the county and back and forth, and right up to having a discussion with Sheridan. And based on what we are looking to implement, the county just doesn't have the capacity to do what we're doing, or to help us do what we want to do. So we did have a meeting with MicroAge and tried to go through everything, but it is just a constant challenge, constant follow-up. I'm constantly trying to follow up with them. The day-to-day things I think that we sort of get irritated with are being pushed aside because the response times are not quick generally. Often there's nothing until an email. I get CC'd on an email, which is rather frustrating from my standpoint. I don't think that should be the way. There's been times where they've been sent to come out and get things done, and either they can't complete all the tasks or they just don't show up. So I'm really struggling with keeping MicroAge as our IT consultants or service provider from that perspective. So I've gone back and had conversations. I think initially when I brought the report, we were talking about combining with Havelock, Norwood, and ourselves. And Havelock has opted to hold off at this point and continue doing what they're doing. But Norwood is looking to move forward. And essentially, they would likely move forward with or without us. But we did have a conversation. They also use SHRP. So we had a conversation with Matthew, myself, and Candace to just discuss what possibilities we might have to join forces. We're both in a similar situation, looking to upgrade phone services and software programs and that sort of thing. So we did have an initial conversation. The draft job description has been looked at by both municipalities and sent off to SHRP, so we can get an idea of where this might fall as far as costing. I would anticipate that in a shared type of position, we would be in line with what we're currently paying to Microwage to have somebody that would be here on a more regular basis. We talked about it from two different aspects. One would be a contract employee that we would share. Or alternatively, it could be somebody that responds to an RFP that we could subcontract, and our relationships would be separate. So we would create a relationship directly with the municipality and just divide the time accordingly. Not necessarily looking for another Microwage or a larger entity, but possibly somebody that is looking to do this on a consulting or contracting basis, that we can ultimately give them almost a full-time role between the two municipalities and have somebody at minimum on site here once a week. Again, we would do it in a contract capacity and then see where we were, a year from now, potentially at most 2 years from now. But we have some things that I think we want to do here. We want to bring in Office 365. I'm not confident in Microwage to roll that out for us seamlessly and do the training that is required. And we may have to bring somebody else in to do that portion, which we budgeted for this year. But I don't really want to start anything until we sort of get this sorted out, because I really just am struggling with the current situation. So I wanted to bring it to the committee for discussion, and ultimately I think we would bring something to council based on our discussion today with a recommendation from staff. And once I have the balance of the information with regard to costing and a finalized job description and potentially an RFP, if that's the direction we're going to go.
Okay, so at this point, thank you for that, Alana. This is just an information report, and you will bring something back at a later point. Any feedback from council or from the committee on this? Deputy Mayor?
I support Alana to get more information about this. I've been frustrated with it too. I do a lot of my research and reading on the weekends, and an email that you might have received on Thursday or Friday, and then you go to look for it on the weekend, and it's not there. And it was quite often a link on that email that I needed to, unless I saved it to my desktop, it wasn't there. It was frustrating. And who do you call on the weekend? So I think Microwave, it's time to move on. And there's some really good companies out there. I gave Alana a name of what Fairhaven used, and they've been very pleased. So wherever you find, I'm sure they'll do better, much better than what we've got today.
Any other comments from members of the committee? Councillor Watt.
Yes, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. It's just more of a curiosity thing, and I don't know whether it's Microwave or just whatever, but Outlook seems to be giving us a lot of problems in the last little while, or is it just me? Like, even trying to get into this today was really tricky. It just kept rolling and rolling. I couldn't get any of my emails to come up, and then finally, just about 30 seconds before the meeting started, up it finally came, so I could get into my e-scribe here. So I don't know whether that's anything to do with Microsoft or whether that's more funneling through, but yeah, we do definitely need some help. We need some good help, and I think it is time to pull the plug on Microwave and whatever works out best. But Alana, I'm sure that all the confidence in the world that you'll come up with a good resolution for us.
I can just share.
Thank you.
Sorry to the committee.
Go ahead.
I think the issues get compounded as well. When you talk about your emails and the challenges you have, it may not all be because of your email coming through the township, but if you had somebody that we could rely on to deal with these issues as soon as they come up, it would be most helpful. Every time I take my computer out of the office and come back, I get an error message and it's logging everything back in, and then the certificates. So, and it's sort of these things where you just hit yes and carry on, because it's just frustrating that we're dealing with it all the time. So I think the email part of that too with Office 365, I think will help, which we really would like to get rolling. But again, I don't want to do that without having somebody in place that can be part of it right from the very beginning.
Deputy Mayor?
One other quick item, and it was a feeling I had during the EOP meeting. I don't know whether Sheila, you had the same feeling or not, but I had the feeling it was that they really weren't taking the seriousness of what we were dealing with. And there were some little one-liners that I thought, that's inappropriate for a big group like us. And maybe it was just me, but Chuck would be closer. Chuck would be closer to that, whether he took exception to some of those comments as well.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from the committee if we move on? I think that just if I can add as well, certainly as we look ahead, it's not just about email, it's about having proper technology, through whether it's through the mesh system or other technology that we're looking at deploying that was identified through our service delivery review, and having reliable people who we can go to get that done is important. And I certainly support your thought, Alana, in not moving forward with rolling out any new significant, software such as 365 until we know that we've got somebody there who can help the whole project from start to finish. The only thing that I would suggest as you're looking at this that's come to mind, I know just from my involvement with the library board, that occasionally they too are needing to call external IT support that isn't the contractor that we currently use at the township. So there might be, on a smaller way, an opportunity to bring in not just our library, but if we're looking at partnering with Norway to see what solutions their library is using, just to further leverage those economies of scale. So it might be worth exploring a little bit further to see what those branches' technical needs are, to see if they can get back into that envelope as well.
I think that makes sense.
Could I get a motion? Thank you. Could I get a motion to receive the report for information? That looks like Councillor Lansman putting your hand up for that.
Yes, to receive the report and ask Alana and staff to follow through and see what they can find out.
Thank you. And a seconder? Deputy Mayor Moher, all in favor? And that motion also carries. Thank you, folks. On to item 6.3, also Alana, your file update regarding Township of Douro-Dummer mandatory vaccine policy. And in our package was an email memo from SHRP. Alana, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Watson. So you do have the email that was provided from SHRP indicating the federal government's lifting some of their restrictions and suspending the policy. We sent that out so you would have it, and if there's questions, we can chat about that. But in addition, we did receive a letter this morning from Jim Mollahan, one of our volunteer firefighters. I'm sure you're aware. And maybe I can just get Martina. I didn't send it out because I didn't want anyone to miss it coming in. And by the sounds of the email challenges this morning, it would have been missed. So perhaps Martina can just share her screen and we can take a quick read. I can give you a quick overview. I did have a chat with Jim yesterday. And he's just wondering what council is looking at in the near future, if there's any feeling to make any changes to the policy. In our conversation yesterday, he even suggested potentially if they were able to come back that they didn't respond to medical calls. So maybe we'll just give you a minute to sort of read it, and then we can chat about the policy as a whole and the correspondence we have. I can read it out if you want me to, but whatever your preference is.
I think we've got this.
Okay.
I think we've got this on our own. I'll just perhaps ask Martina to roll up in a little moment to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
And just perhaps give a nod or a wave once you've got through it so we know.
Yeah.
Yep, this is Tom. I'm done.
I'm done.
Yep, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Elena.
So I think, I mean, it's still a difficult topic, I think, out there in people's comfort level. Currently, fully vaccinated is still 2 vaccinations, although many have, gone to the first booster. And I know a lot of the older citizens have gone as far as the 4th shot. I think it's just a discussion we can have here as to where the committee would like to go with it, and whether or not we want to take something back to council for further discussion at this point, as we start to see some of these things changing.
Thank you. And before I call on Councillor Landsman, just to pick up on that one point that you just made, Elena, and to remind the committee that any decision that we make today would need to go forward to council for discussion. And of course, council is not scheduled to meet again until I believe it's August 2nd, or the first Tuesday in August, just to give folks a sense of what our role is today and what we're looking at. Councillor Landsman.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I do have 2 questions, and possibly Alana could answer them. In the first paragraph of the Matthew's letter, it announces that people can go back to work. It doesn't say that the mandate has been suspended. Is that the actual wording? Is it truly suspended for a year, or to the end of the year? That's my first question. And my second question is, when we put the action into place about people needing to be vaccinated before they work, is that a policy is that all it contains? That's my question. What does our vaccine policy say?
So through the chair, to your first question with suspended, I indicated suspended because that's apparently what they have done. So based on the information that we have here, they're keeping the policy in place, but temporarily suspending it. There's been lots of discussion about whether or not we'll see a resurgence in the fall. So I think that's probably why they're proceeding cautiously. As far as our policy goes, there's a number of things within our policy that we could readdress, a number of aspects. So I'm certainly happy to bring that back to council in August. We do talk about the timelines, which of course have all since passed. So we didn't have anything in place for rapid testing beyond the new year. So we don't have that issue to deal with. There was some information about contractors. So we could take a look at all of those provisions and just determine whether or not there's anything that we want to relax or maintain, or how council would like to move forward. So I'm happy to bring that back, and we can identify some of those areas that potentially there's things in there that aren't necessarily relevant anymore, that we can make some revisions there and look at things that are still relevant and whether or not we want to maintain them as such.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Councillor Watt.
Thank you. I think Matthew put in a very good letter to us, and with recommendations that are pretty solid. I do have a question on one, or maybe it's a comment. I'm not really sure how to word it, but it does say about letting people go back to work that are on unpaid leave. And I guess that's where our stickler is on this one. If the government has lifted the mandate, I guess we are kind of on the hook to say, and let's use a firefighter or two, for instance, not naming a name, but we do have some, I think, on unpaid leave. So is it time to make a one-time offer to them and say, okay, federal government has lifted the mandate, you're allowed to come back to work, but we're not removing the policy. If something comes up again in the near future, it will be put back in place. I don't know. I'm not sure where we are on that one. So that's, I guess, kind of my question.
Elena?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Watt. I think that's, essentially when we look at that, there's lots of variations, and we have options. Things like rapid tests that became unavailable for so long are now seemingly available. So, do we go back to, okay, we allow those to come back, and the library will follow us. So I believe they still have an employee as well that is not currently at work. So if we do that, do we put that rapid test program back in place, and how exactly do we manage that? We pivoted quite a bit with that because we were doing them here and we were trying to keep them on dates, and then all of a sudden we were locked down again. So we were doing them via Zoom. So I think there's lots of things to consider that have changed over the course of the last year. And we can certainly look at the policy and determine whether or not it's council's wish to relax any of that. And if we do, how we're going to do that, and exactly what we want to arrange so that we ensure the safety of our community, and if it's firefighters, what they're responding to.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Mulder,
Thank you. I want to make a number of points. Number one, we're governed by the province of Ontario, not the federal government. They may have changed the policy for federally chartered organizations like railway and airlines and so on, but not fire departments in local provinces. Regarding the rapid test, I think Dr. Piggott is on record to indicate that the rapid tests don't pick up some of the new variant as well as some of the earlier viruses that were out there. 55 to 60% of our fire calls are for medical. Many of these people are people that are having difficulty after chemotherapy or zero immune system. And to have an unvaccinated firefighter in applying oxygen or whatever to a medical call before the EMS gets there, who are all 100% vaccinated, I would think that's great difficulty with me. I think we would necessarily have to get Dr. Piggott's okay, because our final resolution on, where is it, dated December the 7th, 2021. I say, whereas the Douro-Dummer COVID-19 vaccination was recently reviewed, was determined to remain appropriate for our community by the Peterborough Medical District Medical Officer of Health. We'd certainly want to get his comments on there before they made any changes. Certainly, I would encourage staff to provide, keep close to it. There's still people dying. There's people dying in our community. Just to give you just some stats I got here, like US, for example, is 64% were fully vaccinated, and Canada was 80% fully vaccinated. 279 people per 100,000 died in the States, 94 per 100,000 died in Canada, because probably a big part of because of vaccination, 1/3 of the US rate. So we got to be really, we represent the health and safety of our community, and we got to be very, very cautious with this and move forward. We're not scientists. Sure, there's many things we'd like to do, but based on science, it appears to have worked quite well. So I would encourage, keeping close to it. Maybe by August, there'd be further information. Certainly for firefighters who are just fighting fires, I don't think there would be an issue, in my opinion, to make some modifications. But when they're administering on a pretty close environment with somebody that's having trouble breathing, I got trouble with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions from committee? Councillor Watt?
Yes, thank you through you, Madam Chair. One more for me. Yeah, I understand everything you're saying there, Deputy Mayor Mulder. I guess my only question would be, or a couple questions, is it possible in one of our meetings in the near future to get Dr. Piggott to come on so, that we can get a firsthand insight into what, how, why, what we're doing, what we're not doing? Because, and one of the questions that weighs in my mind is even vaccinated people still catch COVID. So if they have it, thinking they're fully vaccinated, and then they turn around and give medical assistance to somebody, they can still transmit it. So that's kind of where my gray area is. And I think he could answer that question for us, with the medical terms.
Hands everywhere. Okay, Councillor Watt, you're done, I'm assuming. Over to
Yeah,
Deputy
thank
Mayor
you.
Moher, and then on Councillor Lansman, please.
Councillor Watt,
Thank you.
if somebody is sick, they shouldn't be at work, whether that's a firefighter or world's guy or staff, clerical person. So if there's signs that they might have COVID, they shouldn't be around. They shouldn't be coming to work.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Lansman?
Yes, thank you. This is just a personal comment, and it shows the way some people think. There were unvaccinated people here when my husband was sick, and it never, ever, ever crossed my mind to question whether they were or weren't vaccinated, whether they, they didn't at all. I honestly can say I never, ever thought about it. And I'm very careful where I go and who I go around with, and have been for 2.5 years. But there are times when you just don't even think about it. That's just a comment.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Lansman. I'll just jump in. You've all raised some valid points. I think what I'm hearing, although I won't make a motion, is that this committee is open to having staff bring something back to council in August, potentially. What that is, I'll let you folks decide by way of making a motion. But a couple of questions around the current policy. Alana, you had stated, as we know, the province identifies fully vaccinated as people who have 2 vaccines. We know that our policy is needing those or requiring those 2 vaccines for staff and new hires. Do we have a sense from public health on up the chain of how long fully vaccinated lasts? I recall hearing, we know about the efficacy, which is why the boosters are happening for folks. If somebody was fully vaccinated in summer of 2021, by the time they received both their jabs, are they even still technically legally considered fully vaccinated by way of our policies currently? And should we be going back to our staff and asking them for boosters? It doesn't feel right, but I'm just wondering where we are in that process.
So with our current policy, and I don't have the wording in front of me, I switched off my screens, but when we were talking about fully vaccinated, I believe we left that relatively vague to follow the provincial guidelines. So we wanted to make sure that if that changed, that we wouldn't have to change our policy. So currently it is still the 2 vaccines. To my knowledge, there is no timeline, but I'll continue to investigate that prior to August if the direction is to come back with a report, just to ensure that that's still the case. Again, I think it's going to be an ever-changing environment in the next little bit, but I'm also happy to reach out to Dr. Paget and ask him to attend to provide some information and questions that obviously I wouldn't be able to answer. In absence of him being able to attend, I could always ask him to make a submission of some sort and try to address the questions that you have here today and give his position on the vaccination and how he thinks we should move forward.
Perfect.
That's fair, thank you. And just another question or comment around some of the comments that I've heard in terms of medical calls and our firefighters. And this is picking up on a point that was made in Mr. Mollahan's letter that was on screen earlier. If it is simply a matter of restricting firefighters from attending medical calls, is that something that is potentially viable, in talking to our fire chief, whether or not that makes sense for them to be able to respond or not respond, depending on their status. And I'd like to remind the committee, although we've talked about this around a lot of firefighters, and I don't know specifically who, and if there are instances, and nor would I ask staff to comment, but the policy is a blanket policy on all staff. So, if we're exclusively concerned about people with, medically who are vulnerable and firefighters responding to calls, maybe we separate that out and handle that a little bit differently than the rest of the policy, where there may be other people now or in the future impacted by the policy. Again, we don't know what the pandemic will hold for us in the fall. There's lots of speculations, and the policy as written may have negative ramifications on existing or future staff as well, potentially, who may not be in a position where they would be putting others at risk. So just my comments around that. Does anybody on the committee care to make a motion on how we'd like to see staff return this to council in August? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I would move that we do as recommended by Alana there, review all the issues, including the comments just made by me, Madam Chair, to ask Dr. Piggott to our meeting. And if he can't attend, I would think we can get some kind of a report back with the many issues raised today from Dr. Piggott.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lanston. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you, folks. On to item 6.4, we have a verbal update, performance appraisal program. Elena, please.
Thank you, Chair Watson. So just a quick update. I think through COVID and transitions of CAOs and such, the performance appraisal program had also changed a little bit, and the timing was stretched out a little bit. So we did move to SHRP or HR Live to do the performance appraisals for this year. It was a little more tedious, I think, than I had hoped for staff and probably management to then review those. So we're just finishing up. I'd hope to kind of get them done a little bit sooner so that we could start the process again come November. Ideally, that's when I'd like to have them all completed so that we're prepared moving into the new year to deal with any grid movement and that sort of thing. So anyway, just wanted to give council an update kind of where we were with that. I think we will look at doing something a little bit different. I don't know if we'll leverage SHRP to continue or whether we look at something from another organization. My thought is to do more of a 360 performance evaluation and bring in some of the staff to comment and provide feedback on the management as well, because I think that's helpful. Now that we have the structure we have in place, I think it's beneficial from everybody's standpoint to understand how things are working, especially right now while the structure is still a little bit new. So I just wanted to give the committee an update on kind of how we're handling that and how I might like to handle that moving forward. Again, I'm open to any feedback that you might have or experiences that you might have had with performance evaluation with respect to the staff. And I think the only other point that I'd like to make is as a committee and potentially council, I don't know if you want to discuss any performance evaluation for myself. So I don't know if that's, I don't think that we have that as a mandate of this committee. Maybe it's something of council, but something that you may want to think about just as I think we're into 15 months now. So if it's something that you want staff to bring options back, or you want to create a situation where you have that conversation, I'm happy to facilitate that or allow Martina to facilitate it if you wish. So.
Thank you, Alana. And I see Deputy Mayor Moe has reminded us that we have electronic hands that we could be putting up. I'll call on you to speak, sir. And you're muted.
Only appropriate that we have some kind of appraisal for you, Alana. It's only fair to you because technically you're our only employee, and I think council have an obligation to complete whether it's a form from the HR people that takes some highlights of the job description or whatever and ask us to complete it and put something together. I'm sure Martina could help with that. I would have no problem with Martina helping with that. And I think it's only fair that we do have some kind of a tool to do that on an annualized basis. It's done at every other level, whether I know the committees I've been on, Fairhaven and Orca and the Peterborough County, they all have a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments from the committee about performance appraisals in general or specific to our CAO? Not seeing anything. I'll add just a couple of comments. I echo Deputy Mayor's sentiment. Not only should we want one, you should want one for your own personal growth and development, and be looking for that feedback. And I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. So certainly, maybe this committee could have a little bit more conversation about what we would like to see, outside of possibly Martina helping to facilitate that, just so that when something comes back, it's coming back to the right group with some sort of general guidance. In general, on the 360 feedback for staff, I've been involved in those types of feedback processes before, and certainly having feedback from other colleagues is a good piece. But I would also encourage, and a lot of organizations are a little nervous of getting feedback from customers as well, kind of on both sides of the counter, if you will. So I would hope that doesn't get skimmed over because people aren't sure how to implement that, but certainly look at that more closely if you are doing a true 360-degree feedback. And lastly, a question, and it's more important than anything I've rambled on about on this, is, given the status of where we're at right now with our performance appraisals, Elena, how do you feel about the current morale of staff? Is there concern that we're not exactly where we need to be and that it is being delayed until November? Do we have anything that we ought to be worried about? And is there anything that we can do if there is concern to put that aside? Because we want to make sure that staff feel like they're being supported and that it's not being just put off for some other reason.
No, thank you for that. I think the morale is fine. This is, I was very open to saying we wanted to get this in place, HR Live, and get everything rolling. It took us a little while to sort of get the structure for the performance evaluation, and then it certainly took a little bit of time for everybody to complete. So I think it's fine where things are now. We managed to come through with the compensation review, which definitely helped, but I don't have any feedback that's indicating that there's any issue at all with a delay. So I like your idea about the customer feedback as well too, so we can definitely look at that. I think that's important. And maybe from the CAO perspective, you're not the only ones. I think in my last couple of weeks in conferences, it was a topic of discussion a lot, and it seems to be an area that the CAOs don't generally have those annual performance evaluations. And we never want to get down a road where suddenly there's something that I wasn't doing that you wanted me to do that could have been addressed sooner. So I'm happy to go through that process, and maybe we can bring something back even to this committee. I don't think there's an immediate rush, just on options on how you might want to do that and how it's facilitated.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Watt, I saw your hand first. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I think we've done, council did performance reviews for the CAO in the past, and I think they went very well, and I think it was very beneficial for both sides because we had an idea of what was going on and the expectations on both sides. So I think it's really great. I do feel that we should probably do it, within the next few months here before the election, because it's this council that has dealt with our current CAO, not someone new coming in. So it's not really fair to and we're going to have at least a couple of new members. I mean, I'm just, at least 2 new members with 2 that have said they're not running again. So it's not fair to newcomers to try and do a performance evaluation for when they've never experienced any of it yet. So I would make that recommendation in there that we do it, within the next few months.
Thanks for those comments, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Can I not change my mind, Councillor Watt?
And you've got time. That being said, none of us may be here.
Madam Chair, you make a good point about clients. Also, senior managers as well should be part of that. So thank you. The evaluation.
Thank you. So a motion from the committee, perhaps, to receive the verbal report and have staff report back in due course on a CAO evaluation. Councillor Lansman, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Go ahead.
They were very well worded. To receive the report and have staff bring something back to council in August, I guess. Or to this committee.
to the committee.
Second
Thank you.
it.
Deputy Mayor Moher, is that a second? Thank
Yep.
you. And all in favor? All in favor, that motion carries. Thank you very much. And we are about to go into closed session, as per stated in the Municipal Act for personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal local board employees. Could we have a motion to go into closed session, please? Deputy Mayor Moher, seconded by Councillor Watt, and all in favor? That motion carries. We'll give staff a moment to pause the recording and all that good stuff.